say, when I looked at the list of countries and these meetups, and I looked at the list of how many people are coming, and I was in Tel Aviv on Sunday, and I think I had about 30 people, and I think in Paris tomorrow or the day after there's about 50 or 60, and then there were 170 people from Istanbul, and that was very frightening. And I wasn't expecting to say anything. But I think that there's a story there. I think there is a story. Why are 170 people in Istanbul wanting to come to talk to the Wall Street Journal, and only 25 people, I think we're up to in Amsterdam? What I have found I've been in Istanbul for one day. I don't know if Brad explained, but I'm visiting 10 cities, 10 cities in 20 days. So my first city was Tel Aviv. That's if you write about startups and entrepreneurs, Tel Aviv is the city that you go to first. So why did I come to Istanbul second? It was deliberate. Istanbul was number 2 on the list. And why is Istanbul number 2? Because the Turkish economy grew at 11.2% in the first quarter of this year, and it grew at 8.8% in the second quarter of this year. And the obvious question is why? What on earth is going on in Turkey that your economy is growing in, average that's still double-digit growth, and the rest of Europe, we're lucky if we're at 1% growth. So why? So that is why I'm here. The final city, and probably I shouldn't say this because it's on camera, there were 3 cities which I chose in order. Tel Aviv first, Istanbul second, and number 10 was Dublin. And the reason for Dublin, that after 20 days on tour and visiting 10 cities, I could not think of a better city in the world to end up in a pub in Dublin. So I'm looking forward to Dublin, that pint of Guinness. It seems to me that the one thing Turkey does not lack, the one thing you have plenty of, is entrepreneurs. I went for a walk last night at 11 o'clock in the evening in the old city, and every shop I passed is open. Every person I met tried to sell me a carpet or a lamp or some tiles. You don't lack entrepreneurs. But talking to quite a few of you guys earlier today, talking to people here in the university, talking to various people, seems to me that what Turkey does, Turkey is in terms of the development of the online entrepreneur, Turkey is not at the same stage as other European countries. And the question then is, what is the issue in Turkey? Why is Turkey not there? And what is holding Turkey back? And as I say, I don't think it's culture, or I don't think it's entrepreneur culture, but maybe there are other things. And maybe that's one of the things that I want to hear from you, what your problems are, what your issues are. One thing I would say, and this is something you find a lot in, not just in Turkey, but in other large European countries. Turkey has a population of 77 million people. That's a lot of people. And it's a young population. So what that means is you can build a nice business in Turkey, in Turkish, selling to Turks. That's easy. That's comfortable. That's okay. I just came from Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv, Israel, has a population of 7.5 million people.
It has no access to any other markets in its region. It's surrounded on 3 sides by people who hate it, and on the 4th side is the sea. So from the very start, every Israeli startup that I spoke to, absolutely from day one, their plan is, how do we become a global company? Not, how are we the biggest startup in Tel Aviv? Or how do we become the most successful startup in the Middle East? Or even, how do we become the most successful startup in Europe? Every company you see there says, we want to be the biggest company in the world, in whatever our area is. So I think that's a lesson for everyone. And I think that's a lesson for countries like Turkey, like Germany, like France, like the United Kingdom. And it will be interesting when I visit, say, Estonia. You know, the population of Estonia, I don't know, 3 million, I would guess. Probably not even that. So that's one piece of advice I can give you. And the other piece of advice I can give you, and I spend a lot of time talking to startups, the other piece of advice I would give you is make the most of every opportunity you have. Get your name out there. Talk to people. Find out what is going on. You know, I'm here to listen to you. But if you stand at the back of the room, I'm never going to find out about you. You've got my email address. You've got my. If you're clever, you can find my mobile phone number. Maybe that was a bad thing to say. But get in touch, because the worst thing I am going to do is to say no. That's as bad as it's going to get. So make the most. So please do come and talk to me. I want to know. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's exciting in Turkey. Oh, one thing I should have said, what this is for. Some of you have been through this. I had lunch earlier today with some people. I want to film quite a lot of you. I can't film everyone, but I want to film quite a lot of you. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds. You get 30 seconds on camera to pitch your startup. In English, I'm afraid. You can do it in Turkish, but I don't think you'll do very well. 30 seconds in English, and to pitch your startup. And if you can't explain what your startup does in 30 seconds, you need to think very hard about what you're doing. That's enough from me. Please, let's get some questions. I've just started this tour, but I have spoken to so many startups in Paris, in Barcelona, in Dublin, in London, in Berlin, in lots of places. I've been to lots of conferences. So if you have questions, please please ask me, and let's do it now if we can, or come up afterwards. So welcome everyone, and some questions, please. First mistake, you must ask questions.
No question? So we're going to start from here.
Yeah, just ask that.
I don't know who is Shiva.
Gentleman there, you have a question? You.
Where are the angels?
Where are the angels? That's a very good question. Do you think, are there enough angels in Turkey?
I do not think so.
And why is that?
Because I am running a business for 4 years now, and I meet only 2 of them to a company. Because maybe this is my fault, but I was not able to touch people.
Okay, show of hands. How many people here have spoken to an angel investor? Not many. So there is a problem. So you need an angel community, an angel network. How many? Oh, how many? Good question. How many people feel they need angels? Okay. So that's interesting. So you don't have startup India. Yeah. How many people here have run a are second-time entrepreneurs? Second or third or? So you've started one company, sold it, now running another one. Okay, a few, but you're doing it again. See, this is interesting. I think this is a good point. If you go to Silicon Valley, and this, by the way, this is not unique to Turkey. It's quite common in Europe, the rest of Europe. So you find a guy sets up a company, does really well, exits for 10 million euros. And what does he do? What does he do? Buys a house in the country and leads a nice life. And that's it. That's what he does. And in the valley, what do you see in the valley? The guy exits for, he doesn't exit for 10 million because he says, 10 million? I'm not selling for 10 million. He exits for 150 million and he reinvests the money back in. So all of you who are entrepreneurs, that's what you have to do. Don't exit too low. Big problem in European startups. They exit too soon and then they don't reinvest back into the community. This is not unique to Turkey, I promise you. Any other questions? Lady there.
What are the commonly mistakes the startups did?
I would say in Europe, I've already sort of hinted at what the biggest mistake is, and that is thinking too small. I want to be the biggest startup in Bucharest. Yeah? You'll never find an American who will say, I want to be the third best startup in Silicon Valley. Yeah? You have to think big. And I think this, I said earlier, this I think is a problem for Turkey because I think you have two problems. Your local market is big. So it's easy to build a Turkish company in Turkey selling to Turks. And to get a reasonable size. You could make a nice living. I think that's the number one mistake. The other problem we see a lot among European companies is exiting too soon. You've built this company up, you've got to a certain size, and somebody comes along and says, I'll give you, I don't know, 10 million euros. And you think, whoa, 10 million euros. Yes, please, I'll have 10 million euros. What can I do with that? Are you leaving a lot of value behind? If you exit at 10 million, actually, have you got a 100 million euro company and you've actually lost 90 million euros? I think we see a lot of exits that are too small. Look at the size of exits in the US compared to the size of exits in Europe. So I would say those are the two biggest mistakes. Actually, it's the same mistake. Now I think about it, it's thinking too small. You've got to think big. I think you have to think bigger. Any other questions? Gentleman here.
In response to your inquiry to better understand the Turkish startup ecosystem, I think in my experience, which has been only 8 months now running a startup, I've seen that the major issue is not that there aren't a lot of angel investors per se, but the ecosystem here is definitely not as structured as it is compared to places like United States or Europe, where there are different types of investors who say choose to invest at the first grade where the business is premature and still has a lot to be invested in, and then there are second grade investors who only choose to invest exactly. Mike, this brings me to my question. Do you think that Turkey, in your experience of reporting, do you think that Turkey has, how would you view Turkey's investor ecosystem in the next coming 5 years or 10 years? Do you think that it will ever be as structured as those countries that I've mentioned, or is it going to go on a different branch? reflecting the culture and the ecosystem of the region?
That's a very good question. Let me think. It's very difficult to say at this stage because the Turkish the Turkish startup culture is at a very early stage, and what every startup culture needs is success, because with success that draws people in, and if that draws people in, then that will bring in capital. You know, venture capitalists will see the opportunity. If they don't see the opportunity, then they're never going to come here. So I think there are, I was talking to the rector of the university, the president of the university, and he was talking about some of the legal changes that have to happen. So I think there are political changes that need to happen to make it safer for overseas investors to invest. But talking to people today, and I interviewed the chief executive of Turkcell today, and he was talking about some of these changes. My feeling is that the government here understands the importance of the entrepreneur culture, and is aware of the problem. That doesn't mean they're going to do it, but my feeling is that they are aware of it. So I think the answer to that question is it's too early to say. I see no reason why it won't happen. It's a successful model. It happens successfully in other, in the United States, obviously, Israel, obviously, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, Scandinavian countries. Why would it not happen here? I see no reason why not. And your economy is just insane. I mean, there's so much money pouring into Turkey at the moment. I would be amazed if it didn't happen. Let's put it that way. Got the one here, and then this gentleman, and then after you.
Welcome to Turkey. My name is Ahmed. I used to be a big reader of Wall Street Journal.
Thank you. Well done.
Okay. Back in the States, I think the European the issue should get better, bigger. I mean, not compared to the States. It's just one issue, I guess, not different categories. I used to like that tech section of the. It will be better for us if you can do it. I don't know how much power do you have.
Oh, I'm very small.
Well, one of the issue, since you're from the media, one of the problem we are having is mislabeling our government.
Oh, okay.
I'm not trying to be a lawyer for the government, but whenever I read a story, like I was in Frankfurt a couple days ago, and in the airport, they make almost one full page of this military stuff, and I mean when they mention the government, for some reason they say pro-Islamic government, and this for the last 8 years, 10 years. I mean, this is far from straight path. I think this should be better if you just accept it as it is, and instead of trying to change people and.
What can I say?
This is one thing that you just want to a feedback as a reader. The reason I'm telling this, it will affect to the investors. Okay, we have many entrepreneurs here. What we need is an investment and investors, angel, big venture, whatever. And when they see they somewhat, like even the Prime Minister one time said, we are not Iran, and we are not going to be Iran. And we need a better publication for this.
You need better PR.
PR, yeah.
You need better PR. You need to work on your PR. What can I say? It's the political climate in which we live. It's the times in which we live. And the best way to defeat that sort of talk is to prove people wrong, is just don't accept it. And your economy speaks very loudly.
Right.
I mean, the one thing, the one thing that there's a sort of law that when you interview anyone in Turkey, you have to ask a question about the European Union.
Right.
You see, so I had to ask Suraj Chalev today about the European Union. Should Turkey join the European Union? You see, so it's always the question you have to do. 5 years ago, you know, the question was, should Turkey join the European Union? Today, the question is, should the European Union join Turkey? So I think you just have to let your economy speak. And all of that, people will always find stuff to, you know, say about you and you don't like it. Prove them wrong.
Right.
That's the only thing I would say. That's the entrepreneur culture. Every single entrepreneur, I'm sure, has been... I think there's two things that every entrepreneur has been told. The first is, no. Whatever your idea, no, it'll never work. You can't do it here in Turkey. You can't do it here in Germany. You can't do it here in the United Kingdom. Right. It's never going to work in France. Everyone's been told no. And everyone has been told, when you tell people you're an entrepreneur, here's a question for you. When you say to people, you say, oh, they say, what do you do? You say, I'm an entrepreneur. Do they go, oh, couldn't you get a proper job? And you see that right across, you see, that is absolutely common. So my answer to your problem, and yeah, it's a problem. Of course it's a problem. Right. But, you know, prove people are wrong.
Okay, fair enough. My second question is, when we read news about technology or any startup, it's about 90% over in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
I mean, this is enough is enough. We need news, local news, in Europe, in here in the Middle East, where people do what people trying to do, these and that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to throw that right back.
What can we do? I'm
going to throw it right back at you. Make sure before you leave here that I give you my card.
Okay.
Make sure anyone who leaves here without my card, you've failed. Make sure you've got my card, and if you've got a story, tell me.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's good.
Fair
enough. Thank you.
The lady behind.
Thank you for the opportunity. I hear you loud and clear, our economy rocks.
Your economy rocks, yeah, it does.
Well, from a macro scale point of view, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we still have
There
quite
are issues,
some issues
course,
to care about. So, you know, it has been again evaluated now on the second quarter. We still have the growth based on the consumption. It's not value adding and all that sort.
No.
And on top, we have political issues. And thanks God you traveled from Tel Aviv to Istanbul safely.
Yeah, yes.
And on top, you know, eastern part is still unstable. So we have a lot to worry about, right? I mean, this is not a very stable country yet. And on top, for the last 10 years, we've hit really crisis in Turkey, even much bigger scale from a macro perspective compared to the globe. So basically, we are still a developing market, and we're really developing as time passes. So my question is going to be related to, okay, as you know, indicators show we're really doing well, but all the examples that you have given, the Tel Aviv, Germany, Scandinavia, London, like Silicon Valley, they're all developed countries.
Yeah, this is true.
So basically, do you have an example that you think is better than Turkey in terms of entrepreneurship, but still a developing country?
If you, I would say, so let's think of the developing nations. You've got, I mean, the classic ones are, you know, Brazil.
BRIC.
Yeah, exactly. Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Okay, not China. China is not an entrepreneur nation. I mean, it's, you know, extraordinarily successful and big. I interviewed I mean, you get your head around how big it is. I interviewed the chief executive of China Mobile. He has 700 million subscribers. 700 million people. He controls the telephones of 700 million people. That's phenomenal.
Well, their search engine comes just after Google, right?
Yeah. So I don't think China. I think you'd have to look at the two that you would have to look at that I know better are Russia and India. Russia is a very, I mean, I'm going to Moscow on this trip. Russia is a very interesting market with a lot of problems, but it's tackling those problems very fast. The Russian-speaking internet will be the largest internet it'll be the largest language group in Europe. If it isn't now, it will be very soon. There are more Russian-speaking users than there are any other language. It's bigger than Germany. There are problems in Russia. I spoke to the chief executive of Ozone, which is Russia's Amazon. $137 million turnover, they employ 1,100 people. Yeah. Why? Because they had to build an infrastructure. They had to build. So I think there are interesting things there. I think Russia does have an entrepreneur culture, but it's not very developed. I think you have to look to India. I think India is a very interesting country. What I think is fascinating about India is if you go to, now I'm going to cheat, because I'm going to say, if you go to Silicon Valley, how many Indians do you meet in Silicon Valley running startups? You meet a lot. There's a big Indian community in Silicon Valley, and actually there are quite a few. I can think of quite a few off just now in Europe as well. Now the interesting thing is, you know, they're doing it in the valley, and they're doing it, and then there's a lot of people going back. What does India have? India produces a lot of engineers. It's a big engineering culture, as in fact is China as well. So I would say India is an interesting model, but I think you're right. I think there are issues that you have. But again, as I say, I see no reason. I mean, there are reasons. That's silly. Of course, there are reasons. There are structural problems. There's infrastructure problems. There are legal issues to do with share ownership in this country that cause problems. But all of those problems can be solved. You know, there's a path. There's a path that you have to go down. And sure, you know, the valley is down here, Israel is down here, and then there's a whole group of people in the middle, and they're all vying for position. And I see no reason why Turkey shouldn't be in that group. No, none at all. Any more? Gentleman there?
Hi.
No, I think then we'll take one more, and then I've had enough.
So a quick question on the positioning, whether to go global or local.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you want to start global, you have to aim big, and that probably requires more capital than going local and taking the low-hanging fruit.
To an extent.
Okay. So my question was, if you were to start with a local strategy, how can you transform that strategy, if it's successful in the local market, into a global perspective?
Well, my answer is do it quickly. I'll give you an example of a company that didn't do it quickly, and it's very successful. It's a very successful company. Do people know Vente Privée, the French sales house? Very, very successful. I forget how big it is now, but they started at the end of the last dot-com boom, around sort of 2000, that period. Huge in France. Very successful, made a very large amount of money. But they stayed in France. So there's now Privalia in Spain, QP VIP in Russia, what's it called? I think is it Brands for Friends in Germany. There's another one in the United Kingdom. The danger is, if you don't move quickly, is people look at your idea and go, that's a fantastic idea. Hell yeah, we're going to do that. And they steal your plan. And the only thing I would say, 5 years ago, I think you were right. 5 years ago, it was very expensive to go global. But if you look at, depends how you build your model. But if you have a SaaS, software as a service model, use the cloud, use cloud-based services, you can operate. And one of the things you probably, depending on what you do, one of the things you may have to look at is a partnership, is having partners in other countries. I interviewed, when I was in Tel Aviv, I interviewed a company called Takudu, who it's about managing water mains, so water control. And they looked and they said, there's no way you could have a water utility company of any size in Israel. They don't have enough water in Israel. So their strategy was absolutely from day one. They made it software as a service, so it was accessible anywhere in the world, and they built a global partnership deals. So they had people on the ground in They operate in Hong Kong, Chile, Australia, France, United Kingdom, I forget where else. And they did that by using, as I say, local partners. So there are ways of doing it. 5 years ago, I agree, it would have been very, very much harder. But now, you know, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need to set up a startup now and get a global footprint? You need a lot of servers, you know, and you don't even need those servers all over the world. Facebook's server farm is still in the United States. You know, they've done well. They're okay. So, you know, the answer is if you're going to start local, and there is an argument, of course, because you've got to learn. But all I would say is you should have in your business plan the thinking about, you know, if this is successful, how do we ramp up very quickly? Now, part of that may be the point, you know, you were making about structured capital. Is that, do I have access to, you know, I can do a seed round, okay, or I can do a, you know, an angel round. Maybe I can do a seed. Can I do an A round? You know, can I do follow-on funding? You know, and there is a point there. Maybe the capital structures don't exist, but if you're big enough and you're successful enough, you know, they will find you. You know, there've been deals here. Sequoia Capital. There was a deal. Didn't they do a deal here? Sequoia? Not yet. They didn't do one yet. But Intercapital did. And that was it. Climate Perkins. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, as I say, you know, capital will find you if your plan is good enough. Okay. All right. Last question, gentleman at the back. Last question, and then please, then you've got to come down here and talk to me, and then I'm going to film you.
When you think about individual entrepreneurs, like this one guy coming up with this idea and then trying to build up something, and entrepreneurial teams that work together and then try to, you know, like these 4 friends that come over, they all share 25% of the company and so. And when you compare these, which ones are more successful? Oh. I'm asking this question because I really think that, so I'm working for PricewaterhouseCoopers and I'm in the corporate finance team. And I have lots of friends that really want to do some entrepreneurial stuff. And I give them support all the time. Like I prepare business plans and I just evaluate their projects and so. And I really think that the major problem is that they don't trust other people and they have hard time establishing these teams. And they really think that they can have all the skills that, you know, one entrepreneur needs.
No. You talk to any venture capitalist, go and talk to any VC, and they will tell you, if you can't convince somebody else that your idea is a good one, you're never going to convince a venture capitalist. VCs, why do VCs invest in companies? Okay, why do they invest in a startup? There's the story they will tell you, and then there's the real story. And the story they will tell you is, we looked at your business plan and we calculated this and we thought this was fantastic and your business plan is tremendous, and yes, we want. Then when you get it, then meet them in the bar and say, why did you really invest in them? Because we actually, ever so slightly, fell in love with the entrepreneurs. VCs back entrepreneurs. They don't back business plans. And that is what they're looking for. And if you're a guy on your own, if you can't even persuade, you know, one other person to join you, unless you are, you know, the most extraordinary, have the most unbelievable abilities, you're going to find it almost impossible. It's too big. And I can't imagine, I'm trying to think, I mean, you know, the obvious person is Zuckerberg, you know, in Facebook. But Zuckerberg had a big team behind him. You know, he's the face of the whole thing, but he didn't do it all on his, he did a lot of it on his own, but he didn't do it all. And you know, there are really few sole entrepreneurs because you don't have those skills. And you also, what you don't have is the person to turn to and say, you know that idea you think of? It's rubbish. That's never going to fly. This is what you need to do. So the fact that you're helping all these guys is brilliant, but the most important thing is to get them together in a team. I simply can't imagine a VC who would say, one person on their own would come in and say, you know, yeah, we'll invest in you. Maybe it's happened. I don't know. I can't think of one, but I'd be amazed. Excellent. I'm losing my voice. Please come and talk to me, and then I want you all to be thinking about your 30-second pitch, because I want to film it. And like I say to you, if anyone's turned up here, by the time you leave this evening, and if you haven't got my business card, if you haven't got the business card of the Wall Street Journal in your pocket, and more importantly, the Wall Street Journal hasn't got your business card in their pocket, you failed. All right? So there's a challenge to you all. Thank you very much, and please come and talk to me.